let some people meander in if other stragglers go out there. But our speakers are here. They seem pretty full. I'm Stephanie Davio. I'm the Public Education Coordinator at National Pesticide. So if you've ever called the office, you can really talk to me. I will be moderating this session on fair, local, and organic foods. So let me just go around and introduce our speakers, and then I'll give them a chance to say some words, and then we'll go around and start and just discuss. So first, we'll have Nelson Carrasquillo, and he is with he's the General Coordinator with CATA, which is the Farmworkers Support Committee. We have Bill Duesing. He's the Executive Director of the Connecticut NOFA. We have Rodger Phillips, who is an urban farmer with Hartford Food Systems, and Mark Page, the Executive Director of Hartford Food Systems, and then Vanessa Lamers, who is the Community Outreach Chair of the newly formed local chapter of Food Shoreline, and she's also currently pursuing Joint Master of Public Health and Master of Forestry and Environmental Studies degree at Yale. So welcome, everybody. Let's get started. I think maybe Nelson, do you want to lead the discussion? Okay.
I don't know how many of you were attended yesterday session that I spoke. No? I spoke a little bit about CATA and the issues of farm workers in regards to pesticides. So briefly, no, CATA is a farm worker organization, migrant farm worker. The majority of our members are from Mexico, all over Mexico, from north and south, Guatemala, the Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico. So we have a mixed representation of the region. And as such, I would have to indicate that the majority of our members as farm workers and low-wage workers are undocumented. And one highlight of that means that most of them, because the closure of the border is easy to leave, but it is very difficult to return, have not been able to go back to their families. So it's been years, many of them, since they have been able to return back home. And that increases, is significant in terms of the dynamics and issues that they face in regards to the workplace and community. I was saying yesterday that for us, the issue of being exposed to pesticides meant that we needed to work towards providing an alternative for the health of our members, no? Because we understood that eventually they would be sick, and then given the way the laws and regulations are here in the United States, there would be very little remedy for them. Because if you find out that you cannot work because you cannot keep pace with workers, then the farmer will let you go. And then you move on to another place. Eventually you cannot make any kind of a claim if you have been exposed or been made ill by your work in the farm market. So for us, we felt that was a symptom, a negative symptom in terms of the food system in the United States, and that we felt that we needed to address it. No? We are addressing the issues as farm workers with the state and federal government, but we needed to work towards a new vision of a food system that was based on different values. No? So we look at, obviously, at organic farming as the alternative, no? Because the best protection for a farm worker is not to be exposed to pesticides. So we began participating in the 90s and throughout with different organizations in promoting an alternative system. And eventually, through those dialogues, both here within the United States and internationally, together with four different organizations, and those of you, if you have the booklet, you will look at in terms of, there will be PASA, NOFA, sorry, in the Northeast region, CATA, the Florida Organic Growers Association, and the Rural Advancement Foundation International, RAFI, which is based in North Carolina. So together, through a period of years, we developed a series of standards that would address issues of working conditions, wages, and protections for workers. I want to highlight that in the sense that what we found was we needed to test those standards. No? We needed to check them out on the ground, in terms of with organic farmers and farms that are doing organic activity. What we found was that the farming community itself was resistant to integrate into its practices standards, because they felt that it would increase their cost of production. And for us, that was surprising. No? We really did not expect that. But then that's the reality, and that's the reality that we have to work with. So it became a process for educating, engaging, and in dialogue on multi-stakeholders in the food system. No? Not only farmers, but businesses. So we began looking at a food chain as a whole, from the production on the ground to the distribution and reaching out to the consumers. And because of that, then we developed an additional project, which is called the Domestic Fair Trade Association, that is in charge of promoting the label of food justice as part of the process. I'm going to pass this around. I don't have many copies, so if you are interested, you can keep it. And that will be fine. As we speak, we are doing a training in California, Santa Cruz, California, which gives us now a presence in the Southwest, Northwest, Oregon and Washington, the Midwest, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and then we are with NOFA, but we're trying to push in the Northeast. It's interesting that in the origin of the effort of the Agricultural Justice Project, where it has gotten more resistance is in the Northeast. But that's the thing, to work and advocate for it and to do it. No? The point that I'm trying to make is that you cannot talk about organic as something that is an alternative for consumers if you don't approach it from a holistic point of view. You have to take into account not only in terms of the health impact that organic food will have on the body, but you have to take account the whole plethora, the workers in the fields, how they work, are they being paid fair wages, meaning living wages? Is there fair, if the working conditions are fair for them? You have to take that into account, because that's the only way, as I was saying yesterday, that will guarantee that that product that you have at the table is wholly, is fair and just. You see, as for us, and that probably I'm not speaking for the other members of the Agricultural Justice Project, but for me personally, if you fail to take into account that, you're not approaching food justice in a holistic way. Right? So I wanted to end my presentation with that urging for you to consider that and think about it, meditate, and integrate that into your work, because I feel that that's the way to go. I don't see no alternative but that one, because otherwise the food justice is going to be a mess. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's turn over now to Bill Duesing of Connecticut NOFA.
Okay.
Give us
I'm with Connecticut NOFA. I'm the executive director here, but I also work with the other 6 NOFA chapters in the Northeast through the Interstate Council, and we're very honored to be part of this agricultural justice project, and we're trying to work with the NOFA chapters which do organic certification. That's in New York right now and eventually Vermont, to integrate agricultural justice certification into the organic certification that they already do. And then there's also been sort of another effort to integrate some of the NRCS's conservation planning into the organic standards. So if you get organic certified, you can also be fair justice, fair trade certified, domestic fair trade certified, and you know, meet your obligations under the conservation. And there was just a story on Alternate this morning about farm labor and the abysmal conditions in California, and I guess the governor just refused to provide shade and water for or ensure that the farm workers there got food and water. In our country, it's said, especially by organizations like the Farm Bureau, that we should be very happy that we only spend 9% of our income on food. And you know, the reason we're doing that is because we're destroying the environment and we're harming workers and we're harming the eaters. So that there's costs everywhere else, but if you just look at what we spend when we go to the supermarket, it's really ridiculously little. And one of my goals recently in the last few years has been to really elevate food in importance in our dialogue and in our planning for the future. Food is our most important connection with the earth after air and water. You know, we can do without air for a few minutes, without water for a few days, without food for a few weeks. You know, what else is anywhere near as important? Food is also our most important energy source. It's the way we take solar energy into our bodies to power them. You know, we're blowing off mountaintops and fracking and drilling and, you know, tar sands in Canada to get this energy, but yet the energy is most important to us. You know, we're not doing it in a good way, and we're supposed to eat more fruits and vegetables, but now 2/3 of the fruits and vegetables we consume in this country come from overseas. Those fruits and vegetables largely consist of water, so we're bringing water, and the plants are made from water and air, so we're importing that kind of stuff from China and South America, Mexico, and all sorts of places. Food is also a most important connection to our health or our disease. And I tried to make this point yesterday. We need to be looking at holistic solutions. You know, we can't solve the health crisis over here and the food problem here. We've got to work in ways that solve them together, because there's no way we're going to, you know, stay healthy if we don't have healthy food. And if you look at, you know, the human species over time, for about 100,000 years we ate plants and animals, plants and the animals that ate those plants. Minimally processed, a little bit more. We look at the last 50 years and look at what we've introduced to the food system in this country, starting with pesticides and fertilizers and artificial sweeteners and colors and flavors and preservatives, and then just in the last 15 years, genetically modified organisms, plants that are sprayed repeatedly with Roundup, or plants that contain the Bt toxin. It's an enormous change in that 100,000 year history of us, and it's not surprising that there are a number of health issues that come from that. Food is also the basis of traditional culture. You know, it really is important, and we've got the industrial food system, which thinks everyone should eat the same, or sort of some cartoon of what, you know, traditional culture might be. And then the last thing about food is I think it's a really powerful, maybe our most powerful tool for making change. You know, you change the way you eat, you can affect your health, you can affect the health of the environment, and you can affect the health of farm workers and, you know, of the whole community. So we need to move food right center stage to our planning for the future, and think about what it might be like if we have a food system that everyone can walk to. Because that may be important as we need to reduce our energy use by 80% in the next few decades. So I'll stop there.
Let's visit Hartford Food System.
I'm Rodger Phillips, and I'm a grower and urban farmer for a small farm in Hartford called Grow Hartford. We're a part of a larger nonprofit organization called the Hartford Food System, which was founded in 1978. And Hartford is an interesting place, I think, especially for the food movement. Back in the 70s, when Hartford Food System was founded, there was a lot of stuff going on about the food system and these issues that the nation and the world is sort of coming to talk about now. Was a lot of stuff that's happening in Hartford. Besides Hartford Food System, there was Knox Parks Foundation, which we work very closely with, who has a huge, intricate system of community gardens. Really amazing community gardens all throughout the city. But Hartford itself is interesting because in its heyday it was one of the richest, most advanced cities in the country. Mark Twain lived there. A lot of other famous people, Colt Factory, of course. People moved to Hartford because of that, and now it's one of the poorest cities. It's a pretty small city, and there's a lot of issues with affordability and access to healthy food for the residents there. So the Hartford Food System basically has a lot of different strategies to try to increase the access and affordability of quality food. Some of the things that we've done over the years, we started a CSA farm, Holcomb Farm CSA in Granby. It's a 600-member CSA. Working Lands Alliance was a nonprofit that came out of Hartford Food System, which is sort of, I look at their strategies or non-emergency strategies. So we don't do things that are like a soup kitchen or a food bank, which might be very important when people need food in an emergency situation. But I think the philosophy or the saying that says give a person a fishing pole and teach them how to fish, really getting people in the ground and learning how to grow food, coming up with strategies in that way. Like, for instance, you can have farmland, but if you don't have farmers on it, then what good is it? Farmers markets is another thing that we work on. We have a farmers market right now called the North End Farmers Market, which is in a pretty low income area, and whereas a lot of our farmers markets in Hartford were sort of where downtown area. This is more in a neighborhood setting. But Grow Hartford is started out of our Holcomb Farm in Granby, and we had a youth program. Teenagers would travel from Hartford to Holcomb Farm every day to be part of this program. That's a lot like what we're doing now. This is almost, I think, 8 or 9 years ago. It became a little bit difficult for the traveling. It's about a 45-minute drive, so we said we would start something right in the city. So what started as, I guess, an urban agriculture project is now Grow Hartford is more of a community farm. Anybody in the community can access the resources that we have. The main parts of our farm is food production and youth education. Youth education is sort of the center of our program. We have about 10, 15 students who take part in a summer program that talks about the importance of healthy eating habits, how plants grow, and they also work on the farm, so they acquire real-world skills that hopefully they'll be able to use as they go on in life. They do everything on the farm during those 6 weeks: weeding, watering, marketing, all kinds of farm work. They will also distribute food to the nonprofits that we work with. So that the youth program is really sort of the central or integral part of what we're doing in Hartford. But also we're growing food. On 5 different lots in the city, we grow about 20,000 pounds of vegetables and cut flowers, culinary herbs, and fruits. And we employ about 5 to 6 part-time people, and myself and a youth coordinator. These are all lots that were formerly abandoned, used to be houses or buildings that got knocked down. People will come to us sometimes and say, hey, we've got this spot, you want to use it? We go through a series of analyzing and figuring out if it fits in with what we're doing, if we need the space, how contaminated it is, and if it is too contaminated, as a lot of urban soils are, we'll either address that or we won't use it. But the food that we grow pretty much stays in the city. And we use a CSA program, we do farmers markets, and we do a little bit with restaurants, but most of the food that we grow is given away to agencies in the city. So our CSA program, which probably everybody is familiar with what that is, Community Supported Agriculture. We have a small CSA that's 30 households. And one of the issues facing, I think, food access for low-income people is CSA. It's like coming up with that money up front in February or something to join a CSA program is not really something that most low-income people can do. But I think CSA is a great way that low-income people can save money. And, you go to a CSA, if you're a CSA member, a lot of times they'll say, pick as many tomatoes as you want, help yourself. And for a low-income family, that could be a big boon. But it's a difficult thing. So having a CSA in the city, I think, is a big deal. It's something that we're pretty proud of. We subsidize part of our shares for low-income residents. So they basically pay only $75 for a whole season, which lasts 12 weeks. And that's it. I guess that's what we do. So.
Okay, let's turn it over to Vanessa.
Thanks, Stephanie. Yeah, so like Stephanie said, I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator for the newly formed chapter of Slow Food Shoreline, which is basically the shoreline of Connecticut was sort of our original thought process. And I had these ongoing conversations last year with the Yale Farm and the Yale Office of Sustainability. Why does Yale not have a slow food chapter? Why is Yale not participating in this global movement? Why is Connecticut not participating in this global movement? And I guess no one really wanted to pick up the strings and just kind of pull it together. So ironically enough, what's great, I guess, for this panel is that our group of people met through a program called Cooking Matters, which originated in Hartford. I'm sure many of you have heard about it. It's like a program created to bring cooking classes to low-income areas. And the classes that some of us were helping with specifically were for low-income mothers with children, mostly children under 6. And how to get wholesome ingredients and cook from scratch on a really, really, really tight budget, like $5 a day. And at the same time that our group was meeting, the Slow Food USA, the big overarching branch, was running the $5 challenge, which I think many of you may have heard about. And it really took off, which I don't think they expected. They were trying to get maybe like 5,000 people in the US to pledge to try to eat on $5 a day per person, which is actually, if you think about it, still a lot more than what some families have to work with. And that's not, it's not $5 a day for a family, it's $5 a day per person. And a bunch of senators and leaders in the country really picked up on it and tried to do it. And some of them wrote about their experiences. Some of the slow food staff in New York and other places also tried to do it and wrote about their experiences, and I think it was extremely successful. So at the same time as this, we have our members who have met and sort of talked about how we really liked the $5 challenge, but a couple of us were really wary of slow food. I don't know if anyone else has had similar experiences, but at the same time as I wanted to start a slow food chapter, I was a little hesitant because of some of the things, the connotations I felt like slow food had, and maybe still has, of being this sort of maybe elitist organization. Not necessarily internationally, because I think it's rooted in justice in Italy and justice for farm workers and fair food and all these things. But in the US, I feel like it's kind of taken on a different momentum than it did globally. But there wasn't really a presence in Connecticut. There was previously a Hartford branch that had sort of kind of phased out. I really think they got burnt out, and I now know how that could possibly happen. So we agreed and we did it, and I think it's been really great. The slow food sort of notion is good, clean, and fair. And for the first time, Slow Food USA has a president. They've never had a president before. They just appointed Josh Patel, who actually worked at Yale and was one of the people who helped form the Yale Sustainable Food Project. And I got the pleasure of coming and meeting him and listening to him speak about his life and slow food and sort of where he envisions everyone going. And right now they are really in this split in the states, this split between, you know, the partnerships that they have with a lot of organizations that focus on like immigrant worker rights and fair food and sort of this other traditional, really foodie culture, which it focuses on, you know, like having connections with really great restaurants and sort of going out to eat. It's a very different thing. But I guess personally, I don't really see the chaos. I don't see the problem with having both. I think that one of the nice things about these farm-to-table restaurants and something similar to CSAs is that obviously they're not necessarily inclusive things. They don't always. You're not able to go out to a $40. Not everyone can go out to a $40 per meal dinner. I certainly can't as a student, but I think that a lot of these restaurants really focusing on supporting farmers who are paying fair wages, and they're willing to say, you know, we're a nice restaurant, we're doing farm to table, we're going to only pick and choose organic farmers who are certified, who are supporting farmers' rights because we know that we can pay for it, kind of sets like a precedent for other people and really like pushes the movement forward. And I think that that's important. But then living in New Haven and living in Connecticut, I also think about New Haven and Bridgeport and Hartford, and I guess my other hat is I work with the New Haven Land Trust, which is an urban agricultural nonprofit in New Haven that has 30 community gardens. And I don't think they're as big as the Hartford Food System, certainly, because most of their community gardens are just teaching people how to grow food for themselves and for their families and for their community. They don't do a lot of selling their food and doing CSAs and such. So I guess I think of like this multifaceted justice. And I don't remember who it was that brought up food banks, but I think I agree, and I don't do much with food banks or food pantries. I agree there is a place for emergency food situations, but I think there's a big difference between charity and justice. And this is something that we talk about all the time, is sort of what we're talking about, give a person a fish, and that doesn't necessarily help them in the long term. It's not sustainable. But if you teach a person how to grow their own food, how to grow their own food sustainably, organically, then you're going to empower them to have success in the future. So that's all for now.
Let's just open this up for if anybody has any questions. Just if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and then, you know, going at it. And yeah.
I'm Liana Hoods. I'm with the National Organic Coalition. I wanted to follow up on what Nelson was talking about organic and justice and certifying to that. And one thing that you may not know is that around the world, the definition of organic in every other country includes social justice. Now, their definition of what that is varies widely, but we're the only country which we specifically say that our federally mandated organic does not include labor or social justice. And so the Ag Justice Project is about building on that. And saying that organic farmers know what organic is, and the government can say it's not about justice, but we all know organic is about justice. And so this helps to the Ag Justice label helps to symbolize that and give it some real meaning and some real teeth. And you know, it was organic farmers were the ones who started the certification. It didn't come from the government first, and they can do that with the Ag Justice as well. And I think it's a really important point that we don't lose that just because the USDA's definition doesn't include it.
Yeah, my name is Mary Dale DeBoer. I live in New Haven, and I work in the area of trying to get hospitals and healthcare facilities to commit to serving good, clean, healthful foods. I started a model program called Plow to Play in a Connecticut hospital. But I'm interested, Bill, in the steps. This is great, this partnership that you have. some of the steps you're taking to build the partnership in our region, in the New England region, and if you could just elaborate a little more. Are there steps with certain farmers, or?
Well, I think the current step, I think, is that there's some training of the New York's NOFA certification staff in being able to certify for the Agricultural Justice Project.
Okay.
I don't think it's moved past that. It's fairly new that it's just started, but that was one of the pilot projects.
The reason I was just thinking, because I'm on the board of the New England Farmers Union, and the good news is that the National Farmers Union, for the first time in history, is having its national convention in Springfield, Massachusetts next March, which is magnificent. Really, everybody's going to see what New England agriculture is about. So I just thought it might be an opportunity to give some more exposure to that effort.
I think we'd be good, and Elizabeth Henderson is really the contact. She's on the back of here. And
okay, great. Thanks.
Yes.
I wanted to add, because you mentioned, and I want to highlight, if the businesses put at it as a if they say, I will buy food justice labeled products, then the farmers will buy into it. You see, they will not voluntarily get into the agricultural justice project because they have to go through the process themselves. So what we are doing at this moment is targeting the businesses, and what comes to mind, for example, if Yale University buys from farmers organic under the food justice label, then that will have an impact, you see. If school boards, hospitals do that, then that will create an incentive for farmers to buy into the label. So we're seeing that as a strategy, because it's about realizing that the ideological battle is going to be driven by the self-interest of the economy. No? I just wanted to make sure that.
I'll just say, in New York, with NOFA New York's certification, we're trying to get the interest amongst the farmers. It's hard for them to be doing the organic certification. It's getting harder and harder, and so that economic push of doing another certification is difficult for them. But so it's moving slowly. But we are trying pilot, train one staff member and then train another one or two, and then try to get our farmers interested in a pilot program. But it is slow, I would say.
Okay. Go ahead, Anna. Or business ideas. Are you talking to me? Yeah. Okay. I thought there might be somebody else named Anna. So my name is Anna Duffy-Pardo. I'm with Toxic Free North Carolina, which is in North Carolina. I'm the resident farm worker organizer and also the communications coordinator. So I want to sort of pick up on what you were talking about sort of the elitist feel of the local food movement. That's definitely the case in North Carolina. It's definitely, the shoppers are predominantly white, the farmers are predominantly white. It's middle class, educated folks in urban centers who seem to be participating the most. And so my organization is we're about to open a new piece of program work that's focused specifically on food access and food justice. In which we're going to work on policy. We're going to work on from the policy end and from the grassroots organizing end to try and open that up to low-income people of color and people in rural communities where the food is often being grown, so that they can have it too. But what I wondered is just sort of, as you were talking, it just really resonated with me in terms of what's happening on the ground in North Carolina. And I wondered, if you're pursuing this through slow food or whatever avenue it is that you're pursuing it through, there's some way we can hold hands as we're doing this, because in North Carolina, my feeling is, can't speak for my entire organization when I say this necessarily, but we've been working for the last 20 years to make sustainable agriculture and organic agriculture a viable industry in North Carolina.
And I'll be damned if it's going to end up being just like California, where you can die of heat stroke, you can live in abysmal housing, you can get paid poor wages, you can be sexually assaulted. It can't be like that. And so I'm ready to go. There's a lot of people who feel similarly. So yeah, I'm just wondering, what are the opportunities for collaboration? Do you know of other groups who are kind of in the same place right now, so that we can like talk and share experiences?
Yeah, I know a lot of people are in the same place right now. I personally have trouble wrapping my head around conflict. I guess because I feel like I can immerse myself in many different communities, and I think a lot of it is language and rhetoric, which I know sounds kind of ridiculous, but that's kind of what I feel like is a big sort of changing point. Like in New Haven, I mean, I can really only speak to New Haven and Oregon, the two places that I've lived. But there are huge disconnects in every community that I've ever been in. And I do think it does come down to language and understanding. And some people are not there, they're not ready to understand. And I feel like it really the food movement showcases the difference between the environmental movement and social justice communities, where many times they're working towards the same goal, but they're coming at it from different worldviews, different perspectives, and so maybe they're kind of getting caught up in that and not realizing that really we're all working towards the same place, because we all want a just and fair and organic and clean food fair system in place. And I think that we also need to be sometimes flexible with when we're working with another group and knowing that their mission. And not all of the slow food branches in the U.S. are on the same page that we are, and there's even some dispute occasionally within our own chapter of sort of what direction that we want to take with our group. And I think we've just agreed to disagree. You know, like if some people are coming at the food movement from a really foodie perspective, and they just want to have fresh organic food and they're willing to pay for it, I think that's great. Some people go the vote with their fork route, and I can support that. But personally, I've grown to think that that's not enough, because in order for us to have fair food and justice, I think we need to work past just being able to vote with your fork, because there are people who don't have that ability, and we need to support them. And I think that at least Slow Food USA and Josh Fertel does a really good job of sort of showcasing that, talking about the dichotomy. But yeah, I don't know much about North Carolina. I imagine that you see the same stuff that we do here. Like Elm City Co-op, I don't know how many people are local in Elm City Co-op, but
I would recommend, if you can, contact the Rural Advancement Foundation.
Okay.
They are in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, we know that.
Okay, so because they are part of the Agricultural Justice Project. I think that they would be in position, Michael would be able to talk to and address many of the things.
I think we had a comment of Lorna.
I'm Lorna Donaldson. I'm an organic farmer from Northwest Tennessee, last 30 years, and now working as a consultant along the Mississippi River and the Gulf Coast. And predominantly, we talk about hunger and we throw money at it, and I work with this lady and another one with the Center for Family and Community Development. We have a project called Gardens of Hope, and we're going about it with a strategy of creating working demonstration farms within these underserved communities. We primarily are working with homeless shelters and women with children. As a farmer, you always know that you've got to have the economic side of it in order to be viable. And it's one component of it is of course is teaching how to grow food for our personal consumption. But our goal is to take these families off of food stamps and create economic development opportunities. So, and then the next step is with a lot of the land that's available, especially along the Gulf Coast, but in most urban settings there are a lot of empty lots and this, that, and the other. What we would like to do is have an apprentice program. You complete the apprentice program And we're going to identify available land so these women not only just rent land, but maybe they become owners of this land. And so our model is to help them. In the facility we're in right now, they live there for 2 years. So during that 2-year time, one, they learn how to grow for their family, simple techniques. And but those that realize that not only can they supplement their food budget, but they can supplement their income maybe with additional. But we'd like to take it a step further to where they're built in for success with the model that they can go in and become a farmer. And so for us as a whole, you know, with the farm bill wobbling out there like it is, we've got pieces in there that socially disadvantaged farmers, you know, there's a lot of opportunity for us to be able to acquire property and it get into the hands of people that never couldn't have been a possibility before. So your point about social justice, it's one thing for us to teach. We need to take it to the place where we create a new paradigm. And I like the idea of the term CSA, Community Supported Agriculture, but I also like it reversed in agriculture supported communities, because now we put the emphasis that our food is centralized, our communities are centralized around agriculture and our food and our, you know, all of the components that go with it. Your lots, what are your typical size lots that acreage-wise? Are they 1/10 of an acre or bigger or what?
Most of them are a little bit larger, between a quarter to 1/2 an acre.
We're using, because most of the land that we deal with is all contaminated soils, compacted soils. I teach that, and the other obstacle is most people don't even have the money to go buy a hoe or a shovel. So I'm teaching straw bale gardening techniques, which create an ability to build soil. And so we have an instant raised bed, an instant garden. In 10 days you're planting, and we have seniors that haven't gardened in 30 or 40 years that are growing food for themselves. And so straw bale gardens in compacted soils using wheat, oats, rye, or barley, rice or barley straw is fabulous. So I highly recommend you investigate that, because now we bypass the obstacle of needing tools. My tool is a pair of scissors. That's the only tool I use.
That is true.
I really want to echo something that you said, and this is one of the principles that we're trying to use with the work that we're doing at Hartford Food System, including the urban agriculture, is that promoting the notion that healthy food is good business, and I'm not just talking about it from a foodie perspective, but that in fact, if you teach people how to grow their own food, if you connect them with the means to do that, either through working with us or through the community garden system that Rodger mentioned. And we've started something, we're working with Knox Parks. Some of their community gardeners are actually being certified as farmers now, so that they can sell. They're growing enough for themselves, but they're also, some of them are so into it, they're growing way more than they need, that they can actually now supplement their incomes by participating in one of the 6 farmers markets that we've got in the city. And you know, one of the other projects that we're working with is there's a factory in the north end of the city that over time, it's another organization is running it, is running this project and owns the factory now, but they're going to be turning it into a jobs incubator, and they want food and community food to be a part of that whole picture. So we've started for them last year, and we're going to, part of the year last year, and then for a full growing season this year, on-site agriculture that is the first in that community. I mean, it's a desperately poor section of the city, and also a section that, you know, has seen a lot of violence and a lot of urban stress and that type of thing. And there are 2 people that are part of that project that live within a block, 2 blocks of the site, who are now able to, they were jobless before and are now going to be in their 2nd year of actually earning money related to farming on the site. And the principle behind this whole project is not charity. It is, can you do this? Can you create commercial activity? Can you stimulate economic development? And then use the principle that the best way to get healthy food on the tables is to have people have jobs so that they can afford to put it there, not to give it to them. So that's what we're doing, and it's really such a critical issue. And I think it's the key to sustainability of this whole thing.
It's imperative.
Can we get
So kind of going off of that, I'm the subsidized coordinator for the Brown Market Shares program, which is Brown University, and it's basically a campus-based food distribution program that provides access for students, faculty, and staff to local food. And our farmers, or the farmers in the region that we're working with currently, they use minimum, pest management, IPM, or whatever, but I'm kind of wondering what you, particularly from NOFA, I guess, how you would encourage the farmers to go completely organic, or like educate them on that, because we don't necessarily want to go to them and be like, you have to be organic because it's the way, and we know blah blah blah. But
well, I think some of that would come from the consumer demand, and I know that there are CSAs that have started because that's what the consumers want. They want it grown organically, and there have been conventional farmers who switched when the CSA, one I'm thinking of particularly, members of her church came to her. It was an old line farm family, and they wanted a CSA, wanted to run a CSA, but they wanted it organic. So she went to NOFA conferences and studied up, and now is doing it organically. I think it's hard. We've been trying to transition farmers for a long time in Connecticut. And it's much easier to create new farmers than it is to transition ones who are stuck in their ways and used to having the clutches of fungicides to keep their peppers nice or whatever.
So does NOFA provide, someone told me earlier that you provide like workshops or educational?
We do, yes. Mostly state-based. We do mostly in Connecticut. Rhode Island has a sort of the smallest of the NOFA chapters, and probably does less, but they had Elliot Coleman speak recently. I think he was actually at Brown, which is one kind of educational activity. We have a summer conference in August, the second weekend, for 3 days, which is full of workshops for farmers and gardeners and consumers and sort of everybody who's part of our thing. So one of the exciting things about NOFA is it's not just farmers, it's the whole spectrum of people who are interested in good, clean food.
I'm from California, so I don't know if what I have to say applies, but in California, and I think this is in all states, there's a certain amount of USDA money that goes to the states, and some of that sort of earmarked to help with organic transition. So I don't know what there is available in Rhode Island, but there's nothing like money.
Yes.
And that's NRCS.
NRCS, yeah.
That's the USDA NRCS has organic transition money to help farmers transition, and then there's assistance for their annual certification as well. There's a 75% of the certification costs are offset. And then there may be some other USDA money that they, depending on what it is they're growing and how they're growing it, to help them transition.
And they just increased that dollar amount, I think, from $750 to $1,000, which is probably one of the best things that's done.
Yeah, if I could just add the university perspective, I know how difficult that can be, and I don't know, do you have a connection, I feel like you have a strong connection with the farmers, or do you bring people out to the farms often?
We don't, not too often. Right now we're starting more of that kind of connection, and we're building like profiles and sending it out to all our shareholders to kind of create that kind of connection. But currently, no.
I think that might be,
The beginning stages.
yeah, it was like starting those strong connections so that you form a relationship with those people, so you do feel comfortable.
I mean,
asking. But then like having students and faculty and staff go to their lands, or maybe like having some sort of volunteer program where they can go and help them like transition a small part of land to organic, or have someone who's really knowledgeable about organic form a partnership with them and talk to them about like the benefits of organic and how to get the certification and like just that logistical stuff, which I think is can be really difficult.
yeah, sorry, just to clarify, there's 6 of us coordinators, so like subsidized marketing, et cetera, and we are close with the farmers. It's just our shareholders, which is about like 250.
Yeah.
Are.
That's what I was thinking of them, not you. I mean, you seem like you're close with them, and then you can kind of blame it on them too. You know, like we have a request. 100 people would like to switch to an organic farm. You know, who wants to fulfill that?
You've got demand.
Yeah. Because we need one of you to do it, and we don't care, but it's them. You know, we trust you, but that can be difficult.
Do we have any other questions, or does anybody else in the back that have something?
Challenge.
Just that everybody's doing such an amazing job, all these speakers. It's very heartening. So thank you for holding this conference.
I have one last question if no one else is going to jump in.
We have a question over here for you.
No, it's all good. Thank you.
Vanessa, and
I just had one more question.
Oh no, he just gave me this. We're just talking about the Real Food Challenge and the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education.
Yes.
Yeah,
It actually started at Brown.
Yes.
Or one of the guys who started it.
See, they already support you.
But going back to the way beginning of the discussion, for creating those incentives for other farmers to kind of hop on the train of just social justice and fair trade and organic, I was wondering, do you think that creating those incentives so that farmers do kind of just do it is as important as if the farmers choose to just do it naturally, kind of, or like for the right quote-unquote reasons? Because I mean,
we need to make that switch, no matter what the reasons are. It's certainly better if you do it because that's what you feel, and you probably have an easier job of transition to organic if you believe in it. But others do it because there's more profit and more money in it, and that helps with that conversion also.
And I feel like in the beginning, you said taking the holistic approach instead. So I mean, I guess
Taking the what?
the
Holistic approach. Yes.
Wait, I'm sorry. How do you say your last name?
Nelson.
Nelson. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Just you in particular. I remember you saying, that from the beginning. So realistically, do you think that all farmers are going to take that approach eventually? Or?
Well, that's if there's going to be salvation, to talk religiously, that's what needs to happen. But think about it. The way the food system is about the bigger the better.
Yeah.
And processed food is not an alternative for people. So the way to go is for organic. So that's going to happen. What is going to add as an incentive is the economics of it.
Yeah.
So like if they have a market,
right.
Because many farmers are hesitant to get into organic because they feel that they don't have a market that will buy their products.
Yeah.
During the transition process that they have to go through.
Let's hear from you first.
Krishna Winston from Middletown. Speaking of big, a lot of the large supermarket chains are cashing in on the desire for organic food. To what extent can the things that they label as organic be trusted?
There's a big debate about the other,
Yeah, well, so that's what we work on, actually, is the integrity of the organic label. And for them to use the organic label in the United States, they have to be certified by any number of about 98 certified agencies, and they all have to follow the same standards. There's oversight of, while the farmers get inspected and the certifiers get inspected, and we are pushing all the time to close that loop, and the USDA needs to be inspected about what they're inspecting. So that is how the law was written and the regulations were written, and we're in the first 10 years of implementing the only food label that is that rigorous. So that's the plan, and that's, if they're in a store, that chances are that's that is what they're doing, unless and any citizen can call the USDA and say, I know of fraud happening, and they'll investigate it. That said, it's clearly not a perfect process, and it's worldwide. If you use the organic label in the U.S., you have to comply with the U.S. Standards, and of course, it's all about how well-run that bureaucracy is. But it is the only label that has that kind of oversight. So
the food justice the label stands on its own. No? The reason why that is the case is because we try to make those standards a high bar, and the training that we are doing at this moment is in terms of California is because of that. So that farmers that want to use that label are able to can market their products with that is a value to the consumers. No? They are guaranteed that that farm and that product is what it is. So this has been a very slow process. So we could have gone faster in trying to push it, but precisely because of that, you have to gain the trust, and you have to make sure that what you're saying is backed up by the practice. So that's the guarantee, you know, the label in that sense.
you need to ask for the Ag Justice label in your grocery store.
There's a copy of this one.
I think for you in Carolina, because sort of going slow is important, especially when you're working with like communities that are hesitant. Like always go slow. Because like in Bridgeport, we've had people who tried to like push programming through really quickly, and I feel like that creates a lot of backlash. So just to reiterate what you said.
I was actually going to go back to something that you were talking about transitioning, convincing farmers to transition. I stopped shopping at the state farmers market because I had been shopping there because it felt good to support local farmers, and I knew that I was doing that when I met them and spoke to them. But once I started working with Toxic Free North Carolina and kind of learning about the epidemiology of it and the toxicology of it, I went around and asked every single person that I used to buy stuff from. I said, what do you use? What is between you and going organic? And one by one, I realized that I should not shop from those guys anymore. I had a guy tell me, well, yeah, we use this on our spinach, but it doesn't do nothing to you. He said, I probably drank 5 gallons of the stuff over my lifetime, and ain't nothing wrong with me. So I quit buying at that point. But what I wanted to say was, what I've seen work in North Carolina in terms of transition and having those conversations is kind of like what you're saying. Is approaching the conversation sensitively. What I've seen work best is having a farmer who has switched, who is of the same ilk, comes from the same community or the same kind of background, and I've seen it work. I've heard stories out of Florida, Florida Organic Growers Association. I still get their newsletters. Of the same thing, where it's like they need to hear it, as with any community organizing. That's essentially what it is. It's an intervention, right, or a community organizing campaign. And it's, I think, to me, there's no better representative than someone who's already done it, A, and also someone who was in the same boat that that person is in now. And so if you can find somebody who can be a good representative of that issue, I think that's the win right there.
Yeah, and just briefly, you just touched on another question of, you know, how much better is an organic piece of produce from, you know, that might be imported from South America or Central America or Latin America or California or from China or something like that than from the farmer's market. And that's a whole other discussion, but just kind of thinking about that as well.
I think, did you have one?
Yeah, you have one question. Becky, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment about some of the things I've heard. I'm a student studying teaching English at the New School. I work in international education. I'm a self-taught gardener who hasn't been able to garden since I've lived in New York City. I'd love to grow some bronze fennel, so if anyone wants to tell me how I can do that while working 50 hours a week and going to school, both my ears are open to you. But, you know, so much of this goes back to education for me. Why aren't we teaching our children more about nutrition? Why aren't we giving them more access to internships? Who will be our next generation of new farmers? Why aren't we, when we talk about organic, why aren't we taking back the language and being specific, talking about polyculture and not monoculture? And when we talk about farmers, what is the application process like? How do they find their workers? I want to know more about their histories. And so when we have these conversations with pesticides, with government, with individuals, with consumers, I think that we really need to look back at the culture and really trying to understand each other more and think about how we can connect with individuals. And I'd like to just say that being a public intellectual, I think, is really important. And however we can engage with people outside of sending emails, and more simple humanitarian daily acts is something that could be helpful for all of us in this movement that has so much inequality and so much, so many obstacles for it to really succeed.
Yeah, I was just going to say a couple of other things.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a wonderful book written by the fellow who directed the Hartford Food System for 20, 25 years, Mark Winnie, called Resetting the Table in the Land of Plenty, which describes his work in Hartford. And it's amazing how, you know, how many things are tried, how hard it is to make a change and make that food available. And one of the trends I've seen in Connecticut is we've seen a large growth in these community farms, which are nonprofit organizations which operate farms, usually on public land, protected land, town land, and many of them, they want to produce education, which is critical, as was mentioned. They want to produce food for sale, but many of them are also producing food for those who need it. There's one in Woodbridge and one in Simsbury. Between them have donated 10 or 12 tons of food in the last year to those who need it. There are community gardens which are solely set up to grow food for the needy. And you know, we've got to have all these kind of strategies, I think, to feed ourselves well. We can't depend on our current economic system to solve these problems, or the government, or the food industry. We need citizens to do it.
And it isn't one thing. It's
No.
not one strategy. It's
No.
all of it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So it's 5:30 right now, which means dinner will be served very shortly, and we'll have a break before our final keynote speakers this evening. Margaret Page will be one of them, and then we'll have Gary Kirschberger. So I think tonight's speaking will be very appropriate